record where. And welcome everybody to Mighty Mysteries. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am thrilled to be here with Gerry Easter and Mara Vorhees, author of the TSARINA'S Lost Treasure, a nonfiction book. Change of pace here for Mighty Mysteries, which I'm especially excited about. Mara, Gerry, welcome. Tell us about your book.
Thank you so much for having us, Sara. It's a thrill to be here.
Thanks.
Yay!
We were excited and intrigued about the invitation to appear on a Mighty Mystery because we had never thought about our book as a mystery before. But when you asked about that, it was kind of fun to think about the ways in which it actually is a mystery, and there's more than one mystery in the TSARINA'S Lost Treasure.
Yeah, there's the mystery of the shipwreck that for decades and centuries was an object of obsession and legend in the Baltic Sea. And that mystery was solved. The mystery of the cargo, the treasure, the cultural treasure that the wreck contains, that's a mystery that the book is over, but that mystery continues.
Excellent. Okay, cool. Well, before we get into it, I just have to share a few of your amazing reviews, your amazing blurbs. So Sarah Jorgensen from Booklist says, what defines a treasure and who controls its fate? Ooh. Easter and Vorhees expertly weave the story of the ship and the painting into history. They plumb the two decades of drama that followed the nursery's rediscovery to combine important questions about the value of art and culture and the meaning of heritage to create an entertaining tale. That's a great one. I love that. Publishers Weekly raves wide-ranging and meticulously researched. Amazing. Easter and Vorhees braid the various threads of the story together and make a persuasive case. Readers will covet this intriguing portrait of an art world mystery. I love an art world mystery or any mystery. Publishers Weekly, what an amazing review. Kirkus says, an apprentice to Rembrandt, Gerald Doe. Is it Doe or Dow?
We say Dow. I think we're right, yeah.
Okay, perfect. You would know. Gerald Dow eventually surpassed his teacher in fame and wealth. Over the centuries, however, Dow's reputation has shifted repeatedly with the tides of fashion in the arts. His story makes up one strand of this engaging new book by Easter and Vorhees, an intriguing narrative and an entertaining yarn whose ending is yet to be written. That is high praise, especially from Kirkus. I could go on and on. You have amazing blurbs from authors, Susan Jacques, maritime archaeologists like James Delgado. So I think this is just absolutely, congratulations on a job well done. Tell us about your process in researching. Well, first of all, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the book a little bit, just the topic. So for those who have not read it, do you want to tell the readers in your own words?
Sure. So the TSARINA'S Lost Treasure actually revolves around a shipwreck. And there's three different storylines, some of them historic and some of them more contemporary, that are sort of interwoven, but they all, at their core, they all are connected to this shipwreck. So the ship is called the Frau Maria, and she was a merchant ship sailing from Amsterdam to St. Petersburg in 1771. And her cargo, the treasure, is a stash of masterpiece paintings, Dutch masterpiece paintings, which had just been procured at auction by representatives of Catherine the Great. So the ship was sailing to St. Petersburg to deliver these priceless paintings to Catherine the Great for her collection. And of course, her collection goes on to become the Hermitage Museum. So these are paintings that would be hanging in the Hermitage today if they weren't at the bottom of the Baltic Sea.
I did not know that. Wow.
And another of the storylines is the prize piece in the cargo was an oak panel triptych, and it was painted by Gerald Dow, who was an early apprentice of Rembrandt. And when we first heard of the story, we were in St. Petersburg at the time. It was in the news that the ship had been found. It was going to be raised. There was all this hype about it had Rembrandts, and it was they were going to be brought up and they were going to be sealed in a way in which the paintings would be pristine. So that's when we first heard about the story, and we didn't know the story. And we thought, this is interesting. We both study Russia. Nobody we knew really knew this story. And we thought it might be fun to do together, a fun project together. And as we dove in and did the research, we found that there actually are no Rembrandts on the boat. But the piece that's on the boat, this Gerrit Douw, who we didn't know, people just don't know who Douw is. But what we learned in doing the research, and then the other story, another storyline that comes out is the story of Douw, who starts from kind of a humble status as Rembrandt's apprentice, but in their lifetime and for 100 years after surpassed him in terms of praise and in terms of sales for paintings. And it's not until the second half of the 19th century, with the turn to modern art, that Douw's reputation, that Rembrandt's takes off, and that Douw's goes over the cliff, essentially. So the story is kind of the rise of Douw, his decline, and then in the 20th century, in the second half of the 20th century, art historians have rediscovered Douw. So he's back in the discussion of the great Dutch Golden Age artists and the pantheon of the Dutch masters, although not anywhere close to where Rembrandt, Vermeer, and Hals are. But in this time, this one piece, the triptych, it sold for extraordinary prices at auctions that had Rembrandts and Vermeers and Hals and Metsu and you know the list of the great Golden Age artists. And one auction, for example, in the early 1700s brought in 18,000 guilders, a little bit less than that, and over 6,000. It was 100 pieces, and over six, and 1/3 of it was Douw's triptych. When Catherine the Great bought it, she competed against Frederick II, Frederick the Great, Louis the 15th. Everybody wanted this, and she came in and just blew everyone away with an outstanding bid. Yeah. So it's this prize piece that was on the boat. That's the real cultural treasure is Douw's triptych, which was supposed to be the great masterpiece of his time. And
what is it of?
You can.
So it's a triptych. It's 3 oak panels, and Douw's specialty is very finely detailed paintings, often depicting. They're called genre scenes. It means they often depict regular people in everyday life. This was really a specialty of the Dutch Golden Age in general, and Douw in particular. Up until this point, most of the art, the main patron for artists was the church. So most of the art was religious in nature. And it was these Dutch painters in the Golden Age who started painting, shopkeepers and families and regular people. So this is a genre scene. It's 3 genre scenes, and they depict the 3 different elements that are necessary for the development of an artist. So there's one scene which depicts a mother nursing her child, and that implies nature, or what the talent that an artist is born with. There's one of the paintings which depicts children learning in a school setting, and that's the learning, obviously. And then one depicts a scholar hard at work, and that is emblematic of practice. So these 3 scenes depict 3 different important elements which were, according to Aristotle, were the three components that make up a successful artist. And this was supposed to be Dow's masterpiece of his lifetime, actually, not only because it was three pieces and much bigger than most of his other paintings, just in terms of size, but also because he captured this, this philosophical discussion that was started by Aristotle about what makes up an artist.
Okay, cool. Now, are you saying that this piece of work survived being at the bottom of the Baltic Sea?
That's
Well,
a good question.
This is a mystery show, isn't it? that's the
How would the paint survive the salt water?
That's the enduring mystery. There's several opinions about the fate of the paintings.
Well, first we should start by saying that the boat has never been raised. It's still at the bottom of the sea, and none of the paintings have been excavated. So that's why it's a mystery, because nobody really knows.
Yeah, it hasn't been salvaged.
Right. But
So there's one side of opinion that the paintings were packed in special watertight containers. That opinion has been advanced mainly by Russians who have a claim. Russia has a claim on the cargo according to maritime law. But I think that we were the first people who ever did the research on the ship in the Russian archives. And in all the correspondence, we can't find any reference to any special packing material.
Well, what would they have even had in 1771? Because there was no plastic. There was no.
Well, so what has been proposed is that the paintings were cut out of their frames, rolled up in elk skin fur, put into a lead tube and sealed with wax. That probably would do the job, except there's no documented record of that. And on top of that, about half the paintings, if not more, I think, that Catherine bought were painted on wooden panels. They were not painted on canvas. And the triptych is on a wooden panel. So the other extreme is that being in the salt water at these depths for this amount of time will have utterly destroyed the painting. And all you'll get is a piece of wood. I think that it's probably more likely some art restorer people and others have speculated that it's likely somewhere in between. The paintings will be badly damaged, but it's possible, if not with the naked eye, with technology to be able to discern images on them. It's not uncommon that that old wooden objects are raised from the Baltic Sea and they still have paint on them. There is a record for that. There's also speculation that depending on how the paintings rested on the bottom, and particularly if they were covered with silt early on, that this could have helped to create a protective layer. And there have been divers down there poking around, looking for it, and there is a very thick layer of dense silk over all the cargo. Some other things have come up from the wreck of fabric that made in the 1700s in the Netherlands, and the dye on it was as vibrant as the day it went into the box. So, but that's dyes. Paints are different, and the paints are also, you know, they have to adhere to the surface, and the pigments can break off. So,
Wow.
So what we argue in the book is that you shouldn't expect to see this museum quality painting come out of the wreck if and when it's salvaged. But what this triptych represented is in and of itself a cultural relic, even if it's kind of a ruin. People like to go visit ruins and think about and enjoy the culture that is expressed through it, and that the wreck itself, the cargo, and particularly the triptych, I think is a one of a kind cultural relic that represented Enlightenment Europe. And it would be, it's the mystery. People want to know what happened to these paintings. So part of the story in the book is the people who want to know, trying to gain access to the wreck and have plans to try to restore or to do something with the cargo. Yeah.
So after the wreck is found, there's actually quite a controversy around what they should do with it, because there's one group of people that want to go down and get the paintings and see what's happening, and another group arguing that the best way to preserve the ship itself is in very good condition and at where it is, and they argue that the best way to preserve the ship is to leave it where it is. Even though so nobody learns anything from it there, but
yeah, so that controversy, it's there was, once the ship was found, then for the next 10 years there was a fight between the wreck hunter, his Swedish billionaire patron who came in on his side. The Russians wanted it. Putin's Russia is trying to bring back lost treasures from especially the imperial past and reconnect with the glories of that period as a way to legitimate themselves. And then it's in the waters of Finland. And so the Finnish Cultural Ministry has a claim on it as well. And the Dutch could have made a claim, but they were involved for a while, but they did not really pursue it. But they've pushed, but this fight went on for about 10 years, and it was finally went to the European Court of Human Rights, where the Finnish government was able to make their claim on it. And then they turned around after winning the legal battle and announced that they prefer to leave it in situ. And having talked to the Finns and the Russians and learning the law about this, we strongly speculate that decision was largely motivated by keeping it away from the Russians. But,
you can really see how all these international personalities are coming into play, and you can see how each country is really staying on brand.
Totally.
Yeah.
How hard was it for you to research something that took place in 1771, so over 240 years ago?
I think that the researching the historical part was actually maybe the easy part.
Yeah, I'm a historian by trade, so that working in the archives and in the other languages.
250 years ago. Wait,
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It's getting close to 250, I guess, at this point.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
and when you say 18,000 guilders, have you converted that to dollars today?
Oh, we really tried. Mara, you were the one that spent hours and hours.
I did spend a fair amount of time trying to convert the historic currencies, but I finally determined that there wasn't really an accurate way to do it. Actually, I mean, this is a very European story, and we throw out so many different, we're throwing around so many different currencies from like 3 different centuries. And so in the end, it was really, we left the numbers in place and the currencies in place so that they could at least be used as a comparison with themselves. But to put it into today's dollars was not really realistic.
What we were able to do, so it would be in the millions, whether it's in the tens of millions or 100 millions, that's where we couldn't say accurately, rather than mislead. We just kind of acknowledge that. But you can put a value on it relative to the time period and to other things being sold in that time period. And when the triptych, it came to auction three times
Mhm.
in the 1700s.
Mhm.
And each time it was a new record for a painting of the Dutch Golden Age. And the price that Catherine paid for it, it was the highest price that was recorded for a painting in Europe up until that time, that from the Northern Baroque. A couple of the Italian masters had sold paintings for higher prices. A Raphael and a Titian had sold for higher prices, but up until that point, there's no record of a piece coming from that came from the Flemish and from the Dutch masters that came anywhere close to this.
Mm. How long did it take you to research and write this book?
I think we figured out about 6 years from the
Yes.
day we decided to commit to it. We went to Finland and Russia. We were in Elsinore in Denmark, in Amsterdam, the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., and talked to their Gerrit Dow specialist. The National Gallery in D.C. helped to bring Dow back by creating a one-man show for him. Dow was the first painter on record to have his own one-man show. He was really the first international superstar of the Dutch Golden Age. It wasn't Rembrandt, it was Dow. Yeah.
Huh. Wow.
So we just speculating here because we are not art historians, and before we started working on this book, we didn't know who Gerrit Dow was. So I suspect many of our readers, if they're not art, specialists or really knowledgeable, they might not be aware of him. But we sometimes wonder, maybe this wouldn't be the case if his masterpiece, his life's masterpiece, wasn't
at the bottom of the Baltic Sea
right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. It's, yeah, that's interesting. I don't know much about art, so I hadn't heard of him, and this is,
Oh
Yeah, I mean, his paintings
Yeah.
are found in major museums, but he's certainly
small.
not one of the, they're very small scale, and he's certainly not one of the better known painters of the Dutch Golden Age anymore.
His talent was that he could paint something more lifelike than reality itself. That he was able to work kind of illusions with his brush and on the canvas or panels. And I think that once photography kicked in, his great skill ceased to enthrall. After that, style becomes, you think of expressionism, impressionism in the 20th century. Style starts to become what's noted. Yeah.
Mm. Fascinating. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is so interesting. I actually was watching a documentary recently about the Titanic sinking. I've watched many, and they were having the same sort of argument about whether the ship should be left down there where it is. Some people arguing that that's the best way to preserve the ship. Others arguing that that is a graveyard where so many people lost their lives, so it's not right to dig it up. Others arguing that the best way to honor those who lost their lives and preserve the history is to bring it up. And so it's sort of the same, issues and controversy that you're saying is about, that you cover in your book. And another thing that I thought was fascinating is that the bones of the people who died have dissolved because bone dissolves in salt water, I learned, but leather does not. So all of the shoes of the people who died are still perfectly preserved lying on the ocean floor.
Yeah.
Where their bodies were.
In the case of the Frau Maria, it was a cultural tragedy, but I guess the fortunate side of our story is that nobody died in the shipwreck. They were able to rescue themselves, but not rescue most of the cargo. So in this particular case, the the dead bodies or the graveyard argument doesn't pertain to it. That said, there's a movement in archaeology today, and including in marine archaeology, where many people believe, some scholars believe that the best way to preserve a ruin or something from a relic from the past is to leave it in situ. And that's sort of the first option that you should consider with any kind of ruin. So it includes, for example, the Mayan ruins in Belize, which are still covered over with earth.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what's happening in Finland right now. Is there's a group of marine archaeologists who are in the Finnish bureaucracy who are abiding by that school of thought, that the ship is being preserved very well where it is. And so they're proposing to just leave it there. Once it's raised and the environment changes, then the ship is going to interact with the air in a whole new environment, and it will begin to deteriorate in ways that they don't know about yet. And so that's why the ship is still there. The counter argument, of course, is that nobody can learn from it when it's at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, right? It's in 40 meters of water. Divers can access it, but only for 8 minutes at a time or something. And furthermore, access is totally restricted. You have to get special permission to dive there. So nobody can see it, and nobody is learning this story as they might be if the ship was on display in a museum, or even better, if some of these wood panels that used to be paintings, in whatever state they are now, if they were on display with their story. And in some cases we have copies of the paintings which could also be displayed alongside them. So there's a lot of different ways that we could be learning from this wreck, and they're not really taking advantage of that. So
there's a life-size copy of the triptych that was painted in the 1770 as the date that's put on it. And the argument of in situ preservation, it makes sense. I mean, it began with land-based archaeology, to begin to open up a pyramid, a mound, and then not have the resources to be able to really take full control of it, left it at the mercy of looters. You revealed its spot. And so I think that there are plenty of cases in which that option is probably the right one, the correct one. In the case of shipwrecks, this isn't one that has dead bodies, so it doesn't, bring in that issue. But also, we talked to and interviewed some marine archaeologists, and including some people who helped to write the UNESCO rules about shipwrecks. And it seems that there's a view that if you don't have the resources, and if you don't have a good idea about why you're doing this and how you're going to do it, then just leave it there. And particularly this ship in the cold and kind of brackish waters of the Baltic, it's not rapidly deteriorating. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to salvage it or even raise it if you have a good archaeological plan for it and for the preservation. And I don't know, at least I kind of feel like the Finnish government has kind of falls back on the in situ. It's a bit convenient for them. Finland isn't even a party to the UNESCO treaty. But
only when it's convenient for them.
But they fall back on that. And so, and we interviewed them too.
So what do you think, Mara and Gerry, separately? Would you want it brought up, or do you want it left there?
I think I can speak for both of us and say we would like to see it raised. It's a huge financial commitment, which is sort of another excuse that the Finns are using why they don't do anything with it. But I think that the ship has a great story, right? This is the story that we're trying to tell in our book. And it could be told so much more vividly with an actual ship and the relics from the ship. And the famous example of a shipwreck that was raised and put on display is right next door in Stockholm. There's the Vasa was a Swedish warship which was raised and put on display in Stockholm, and it's the most popular museum in Stockholm now. And my understanding, I don't have numbers at my fingertips, but my understanding is that the revenue brought in by people going to see this shipwreck museum supports the rest of the national museums in the country.
Wow.
So I think there's definitely a contingent of people even in Finland who believe that they could do something similar. I mean, the ship itself is totally different. It's a merchant ship. It's not as beautiful as this warship, but it has such a fantastic story, and it has a treasure. Whatever condition the treasure is in, there's still a treasure in there. And yeah, I think that it should be, they should summon up the energy and the resources and raise it and do something with it.
Yeah, I think that I think the question of it being raised, or at least the cargo salvage, is not so much if, but when. The interest in it within Finland is never really seems to go away. Every couple of years, there's a new group with a new plan that to try to create a shipwreck museum for their waterfront, and to make the Frau Maria the centerpiece of it, to have an ongoing process of salvaging and seeing what comes out of it that people can watch for, watch the technicians at work. It is expensive, although the Finns have been made proposals to share in the costs, but there's kind of a bureaucratic mentality, you might say. It's a resource that they're very zealous to possess for themselves, even though they don't themselves have an interesting plan for it or the resources to do it. But sharing control of it is something that they're not, that at least the people who have been in charge of it have not been willing to do. But there's also, we noticed, there's a generational divide within that bureaucracy. And the younger generation, which would be people in their 40s, maybe a little bit younger, but that some of them are people who only got into marine archaeology and conservation because of Frau Maria. And among that cohort, there is a enthusiasm to do something with this ship. And if it involves cooperating with the Russians, so be it. They don't really have the same antagonistic view of Russia that maybe their parents did. And I think that it's a matter of time before different people are in charge, and the mystery will be solved.
Excellent. Well, I have so enjoyed hosting you. It feels like we've been chatting for a second, but I guess we have reached the end of our time. So what is one thing you want readers to take from this book? What do you want them to learn or to feel or to walk away thinking?
You can start.
Well, okay, this is maybe a surprising answer, but it's the first thing that came into my mind. So I have a pretty long history of traveling to Finland. And in fact, it was the first country I ever went to besides Canada. When I left the country to go abroad, I was 16 years old and went there for a summer. And ever since I started going to Finland, people are often surprised that that's a place that you would go, or confused, or but I have just fallen in love with this country, and we had such a great time doing our research there and learning even more about the country and experiencing their hospitality and seeing the just spectacular seascapes and countryside. And yeah, I mean, we don't get into the Finnish culture a ton in the book, but it's a really intriguing place that I think is kind of underappreciated. So I hope that we were able to convey a little bit about what makes Finland really special to me.
Interesting. How about you, Gerry?
Well, Mara's a travel writer, so she just gave a travel writer's view.
Right.
I'm a historian, like big picture history, big macro history. What impressed me increasingly as we did the book and we're writing it up was how this story is an international story. You know, it belongs to Finland right now, and it doesn't really, you know, a shipwreck that was going to Russia is not really something that is a go-to a cultural relic for our national identity, you know. But the story of the Frau Maria it transcends Finland. It was a Dutch ship with a Dutch cargo. It had a Danish captain. It sunk in the waters that was Sweden at the time. It was headed towards the court of the great enlightened Empress Catherine the Great. And what impressed me about the story of the wreck and its cargo is that how it represents what's transcendent in history, the idea of a common European home, that, you know, and especially in the time we live in now, where kind of more exclusive and chauvinistic nationalist identities seem to be ascendant again, that what the Enlightenment meant, what the Dutch Golden Age meant, and what the story of Frau Maria meant runs against that, and claims that these were good ideas. These did, you know, the self-worth of individuals were promoted by the culture and the commerce that went on in the 18th century, and that this wreck represents. So that kind of big, grand historical lesson, and this kind of competition about what's important to us. We choose to make things important to us. Yeah. And I would like to see this ship become important to people because of these ideas. Yeah.
I love that. And I think that your book is a really beautiful way of putting that on the page and bringing the ship to people first in that medium, and who knows in the future.
We hope so.
Sara and Gerry, thank you so much for joining us here on A Mighty Mystery. This has been fascinating. And then we will link to your book here in the comments. We have a special partnership with bookshop.org. You can support independent bookstores and get this fabulous book. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on A Mighty Mystery. There it is. Yay!
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye, Sara.